When I first started teaching English, I met many students who had the same problem. They could understand some English, they could read a few words, but when it was time to speak, they would forget everything. They would look down, they would feel nervous, and they would ask me, "Why can't I remember the words when I speak?" Maybe you feel the same. Maybe you study every day, you write new words in your notebook, you try to repeat them, but when you try to use those words in a real conversation, they are gone. Your mind goes blank. You feel like all your work was for nothing. If this has happened to you, I want to tell you something important. You are not alone. This happens to almost every English learner. Even native speakers forget words sometimes. The truth is, memory is not a machine. You don't press a button and get the answer. Memory is more like a garden. If you plant a seed and walk away, nothing will happen. But if you give it water, sunlight, and care, the plant will grow. Words are the same. I once had a student named Farah. She was kind, smart, and very serious about learning English. Every day after class, she would stay for 5 minutes and ask me questions. She had a little notebook, and inside were many English words written in small, neat letters. One day, she said to me, "Teacher, I read these words every day, but I always forget them. Why can't I keep them in my mind?" I looked at her notebook. The words were written in English with Bangla meanings next to them. Some were underlined, but none had any examples. None had any sentences. I said to her, "Farah, you are planting seeds, but you're not giving them sunshine or water. You are memorizing words, but not using them." She asked, "What should I do?" I said, "You must meet the words again and again in different ways. You must speak them, write them, hear them, and feel them. Only then will they stay." She didn't understand right away, so I gave her a task. I chose 5 words from her notebook, simple words like happy, visit, difficult, remember, and story. I said, "I want you to write 1 sentence about your life for each word, not from a textbook, not from your imagination, from your real life." She came back the next day with a big smile. She showed me her paper. It said, "I feel happy when I walk with my sister after sunset. I will visit my grandmother this Friday. Math is difficult, but I try my best. I remember my first day of school clearly. My grandfather tells the best stories at night." I said to her, "Now read them aloud." She did. Her voice was quiet but steady, and when she finished, I asked, "Do you remember the meanings now?" She nodded. "Yes, teacher. I don't even need to look." That's the power of connection. When you connect a word to your life, to your feelings, to your memories, it becomes yours. You don't just learn the word, you live it. Another student named Ahmed had a different challenge. He learned words, but always in isolation. He would write long vocabulary lists, 20 words a day, but after 1 week, he could not remember most of them. I asked him, "How do you study these words?" He said, "I write them down 10 times, I read them, I try to say them." I nodded. "That's good effort," I said. "But where are the pictures? Where are the emotions? Where are the conversations?" He looked confused, so I gave him another task. I said, "Take 10 words. Instead of repeating them, tell me a small story using those words. It can be real or made up, but try to make it emotional. Try to imagine the story clearly." He came back the next day with a story about a dog he had when he was younger. He used 8 of the 10 words, and when I asked him those same words later, he remembered every one. Why? Because the words were now part of something bigger. They were part of a memory, a moment, a scene in his mind. Let me explain something. Your brain is not a storage room. It is not a place where you just keep words and take them out when needed. Your brain is a storyteller. It remembers stories better than lists. If you give your brain 100 words on a page, it will forget most of them. But if you give your brain one short story with 10 words, it will keep them. That's why so many learners feel stuck. They memorize, but they don't connect. They study, but they don't speak. They read, but they don't feel. So what should you do? First, change the way you see new words. Every new word is not just a fact to remember. It is a door to a sentence, to a feeling, to a memory. When you learn a word like cold, don't just say cold means not hot. Think about a cold night in your life, the feeling of your hands in your pockets, the way your breath turned white in the air. Now say, last winter, I walked home late at night. It was cold. I wore 2 jackets. Now the word cold is no longer just a translation. It's a moment. Second, repeat with variety. Don't repeat the word the same way every time. One day, write it. Another day, say it aloud. Another day, record yourself using it. Another day, listen for it in a video or podcast. Each time you meet the word in a new place, your brain becomes more familiar with it. Third, speak, even if it's wrong. Some students are so afraid of making mistakes that they don't speak at all. This is the biggest mistake. Words are not meant to stay in your head. They are meant to come out. So say them, use them. And yes, get them wrong. That's okay. Every mistake is a step closer to fluency. One of my students once said to me, "I only want to speak English when I can speak perfectly." I smiled and replied, "Then you will never speak." Fluency is not about perfection. It's about progress. You can forget words. That's okay. But if you try again tomorrow, and again the next day, and again the day after that, one day those words will stay. Every student I've ever taught, even the most fluent ones today, started the same way. They forgot. They made mistakes. They got frustrated, but they did not give up. They listened, they repeated, they made English part of their daily lives, and slowly, one word at a time, they built something strong. You can do that too. One afternoon, I was sitting in the library. A young man named Leo came to me with a worried look on his face. He said, "Teacher, I study every day. I know many words, but when someone speaks fast, I don't understand. I feel like all the words I learned disappear. What should I do?" I looked at him and said, "Leo, tell me, when you hear someone speak, do you try to translate every word into your language?" He said, "Yes, I always translate in my head before I understand." I nodded and said, "That's where the problem begins. Translating in your mind slows you down. It takes energy. It makes you tired. And it creates confusion. You're using your native language as a middle step. But fluency comes when you start thinking in English directly." He asked me, "But how can I think in English when I don't know enough words?" I smiled and said, "You already know some words. Start with those. Use them in your thinking. When you look at your phone, say phone instead of the word in your language. When you walk, say in your mind, I am walking. The sky is blue. I feel good." Even if you don't know every word, try to describe things with what you do know. Leo decided to try it. He made a small goal for himself. Every morning, he would describe what he was doing in simple English. After 2 weeks, he came back and said, "Teacher, it's getting easier. Sometimes I think in English without trying." That is the beginning of fluency, when the language starts to live inside your thoughts. Another thing I always tell my students is this: don't just learn words, learn phrases. Words alone are like bricks, but phrases are like walls. They hold everything together. If you learn the word time, that's good. But if you learn the phrase take your time, on time, in time, or waste time, you are building something much stronger. I had a student named Nabila. She was very good at remembering single words, but when she tried to make sentences, they felt empty. I said to her, try to learn chunks of language, not just the word, but how people really use it. She asked, how can I do that? I said, watch how native speakers speak. Don't just look for individual words. Listen to full expressions. Pay attention to how sentences are built. Notice the little things. She started watching English videos with subtitles. She paused and repeated. She copied full sentences. She practiced in front of the mirror. One day, she came to class and said, I finally understand what it means to make up your mind. I heard it in a movie. Now I use it too. She didn't just learn a word, she learned a real tool for conversation. There was another student who was very shy. His name was Rajib. He had many words in his notebook, but he never spoke in class. I asked him why. He said, I'm afraid people will laugh at me. What if I say it wrong? I told him, Rajib, I will teach you a secret. Even native speakers make mistakes. They forget words. They use the wrong tense. They change their sentence halfway through, but they keep talking. I gave him a small task. I said, today, just say one sentence in class. It doesn't have to be perfect, just say it. He was nervous, but he said, today is a good day. Everyone smiled. Nobody laughed. He smiled too. The next day, he said 2 sentences. The day after that, 3. After a month, he was speaking more than anyone in the room. Confidence comes from action, not from waiting to be perfect. You don't need to know every word to speak English. You just need to use the words you do know in the best way you can, and then add more, one by one. Some students ask me, what's the fastest way to become fluent? I tell them, there is no one fast way, but there are many small ways that together make a big difference. Speak a little every day. Listen with care. Read what you enjoy. Write your thoughts. Ask questions. Use the words you learn. And most of all, don't stop. Fluency is not something you find. It's something you build. Another student once asked, Teacher, how do I know if I'm improving? That's a good question, because sometimes it's hard to see our own progress. I said, keep a simple journal. Every week, write a few lines about what you learned. Write what new words you used, what sentences you spoke, what videos you watched. After 1 month, go back and read the first entry. You will see the difference. Your sentences will be longer. Your ideas will be clearer. Your fear will be smaller. Improvement doesn't always feel big, but it's always happening. Sometimes, even watching one video or reading one story can help you grow. Sometimes repeating a word 10 times in a fun way makes it stick. Fluency is not only about hard work, it's also about joy. Do you enjoy learning English? Find what makes you smile. If you like music, sing in English. If you love movies, watch one with subtitles. If you enjoy writing, keep a simple diary. If you like to talk, find a partner online or in person. Whatever brings you joy will also bring you learning. Don't turn English into a punishment. Make it part of your life. Make it feel like a game, a journey, a discovery. You are not too old. You are not too slow. You are not too late. You are just at the beginning of something beautiful. And every time you say a word out loud, every time you understand a sentence, every time you try again after forgetting, you're building your English. You are building your voice. And the world is waiting to hear it.
One evening, during the last class of the day, a student named Hannah raised her hand. She was quiet, usually not the first to speak. But that day, she looked serious. She said, Teacher, I practice, I repeat, I listen. But when I speak, the words come out slow. People lose patience. I feel embarrassed. I looked at her and said, Hannah, speaking slowly is not something to feel bad about. In fact, many good speakers speak slowly. Fluency is not the same as speed. It's about being clear, confident, and calm. She looked surprised. She said, But I thought good English means speaking fast. I smiled and shook my head. No, good English means being understood. It means saying what you want to say without fear. If someone speaks too fast but nobody understands them, is that really fluent? She thought for a moment and said, I never looked at it that way. We did a small exercise in class. I asked everyone to speak slowly, to pause between ideas, to use their hands and eyes, to express with their whole body. The classroom became alive. Students laughed. They understood each other better. And Hannah? That day, she read a paragraph slowly, clearly, beautifully. Everyone clapped. Fluency also includes how you feel inside when you speak. Some students have strong vocabulary, but they still feel stuck. Others have simple vocabulary, but they speak with joy, and people love listening to them. The difference is not in the words. It's in the heart. If you feel shy, it's okay. Many learners are shy. But remember this, your voice matters. Your ideas matter. And when you speak in English, even with mistakes, you are opening a door to the world. There was a boy in my class named Adnan. He came from a small town and had never spoken English before coming to school. On his first day, he stood at the back of the class and didn't speak at all. After a few days, I walked up to him and asked, "How are you doing?" He whispered, "Good." I asked, "Do you like English?" He nodded. I said, "Would you like to read one line from the board? Just one line." He looked nervous, but then he said yes. He read it very slowly. Each word felt heavy in his mouth. But when he finished, the classroom was silent. And then someone clapped. Then another, and another. Adnan smiled. That was the beginning. One line, one small win, one door opening. Every learner has a moment like this. A first sentence, a first time using a word correctly, a time when someone understands you clearly. These moments are like steps. Each one brings you higher. I tell my students all the time, don't wait for a big change. Look for small wins. Small wins every day. 5 new words, 1 conversation, 1 sentence spoken out loud. These are the real victories. One student named Maya used to keep a small notebook with her. She called it her confidence book. Every time she used a new word in a sentence, she wrote it down. Every time someone understood her, she made a note. After 2 months, her notebook was full of these small wins. She said to me, "Teacher, I didn't know I was doing well, but when I look at this book, I feel proud." This is how we grow, not all at once, but slowly, with proof, with practice, with patience. There is something else I want you to remember. English is not just for tests. It is not just for school. It is for life, for talking to new people, for watching the world, for understanding books and stories, for getting a new job, for sharing your ideas, for helping someone, for learning more about who you are. When you think about English this way, it stops being a subject. It becomes a skill, a tool, a friend. I once knew a girl named Nisha. She said, "I used to hate English. It was hard, it made me feel stupid, but then one day I watched a movie in English and I cried. I understood the story. I felt it. And I thought, maybe English can be part of my life." From that day, she stopped studying only from textbooks. She started reading stories. She listened to songs. She wrote in a journal. And most importantly, she stopped saying, "I hate English." She started saying, "I'm learning English." Words are powerful, not only the words you say in English, but the words you say to yourself. If you say, "I can't do this," your brain listens. If you say, "I'm trying," your brain listens. If you say, "I will do better tomorrow," your brain listens. And when your brain hears kind words, it grows stronger. So, be kind to yourself. Learning a language is hard. It takes time. You will forget things. You will make mistakes. People may not always understand you, but don't stop. There's a saying, fall 7 times, stand up 8. It means you keep going even when it's hard, even when you forget, even when you feel tired. 1 word a day, 1 phrase a day, 1 simple conversation. Over time, these become a river, and that river becomes fluency. One more story before we stop today. A boy named Kento joined my class. He was quiet, very polite, and very curious. He loved to ask questions about words, but he never spoke in full sentences. I asked him, "Why don't you try speaking in longer sentences?" He said, "Because I don't want to make a mistake. If I say a wrong sentence, I feel bad." I gave him a sentence and said, "Make this wrong, on purpose." He looked surprised. I said, "Yes, say it wrong. Let's break it." He said something like, "She happy very going." I smiled and said, "Good, now fix one word." He said, "She is happy very going." I said, "Now fix another." He thought for a moment and said, "She is very happy going." I said, "Close. What do you want to say?" He said, "She is very happy to go." I said, "Perfect." He laughed and said, "That was fun." Sometimes the fear of mistakes is stronger than the mistake itself. But when you play with language, when you treat it like a puzzle, it becomes fun. It becomes exciting. You stop worrying. You start building. And that's when fluency begins. Some learners think fluency is a final goal, like something far away, something they will reach someday if they work very hard. And yes, fluency is something to work for, but it's also something you build little by little, day by day. It is not only the final result, it is the process too. I remember one of my students, Kareem. He loved football. Every day he would come to class with stories about matches he had watched, but he never used English to tell those stories. One day I said, "Kareem, you know so much about football. Why don't you tell your stories in English?" He laughed and said, "Because I don't know the right words." I said, "That's okay. Start with the words you do know. If you don't know how to say a word, describe it." The next day he tried. He said slowly, "My favorite player, he kicked the ball very strong. It went in the goal, and the team was very happy." I clapped. I said, "That's how you start. The words may be simple, but your meaning is clear." Then I helped him with some new words. Powerful shot, scored a goal, celebrated. He smiled and said, "Now I can say it better." This is how vocabulary grows. First you try, then you improve, then you try again. The mistake many learners make is waiting too long to use the language. They say, "I need to learn more before I speak." But the truth is, you learn more by speaking. Just like a child learns to walk, not by studying walking, but by trying, falling, and standing again. You can learn the meaning of words from a dictionary, but you understand them best by using them in real situations. So when you go to the shop, try to say one sentence in English in your mind. When you cook, describe the steps in English. When you look outside the window, say what you see: the trees, the sky, the people. These small actions are not small. They are your daily practice. Fluency grows not only in the classroom, but in life. One of my students, Jaya, once said, "I feel shy speaking to people, so I don't get to practice." I said, "Then speak to yourself. Talk out loud when no one is around, or stand in front of a mirror and describe your day." She looked surprised. "Does that really help?" I said, "Yes. When you hear your own voice in English, something changes. You start to feel more comfortable. Your fear becomes smaller." She tried it. She stood in front of her mirror every night and talked about her day. At first, she said just a few words, but slowly the sentences grew longer. After 2 weeks, she came to class and said, "I think I'm getting better. I don't feel so nervous anymore." I said, "That's because you're practicing in a safe way, and practice brings confidence." I had another student, Yusuf, who worked at a small bakery.
He didn't have much time for formal study. He said, "I can't go to class every day. I'm always working." I told him, "That's okay. Your job can be your classroom." He looked confused. I explained, "Every time you speak to a customer, try using one English word. Start with hello, then say thank you, then have a nice day. Just one small phrase at a time." He tried it. After a few days, he said, "Customers smile when I speak English. I feel good." I said, "And that feeling will help you grow." Fluency is not only about grammar and vocabulary. It's about human connection. It's about using the language to share, to ask, to smile, to listen. And those little connections, they build your courage. They show you that your English is not just something on paper, it's something alive. There was a student who told me, "I don't feel motivated. I want to learn, but I don't have the energy." I asked her, "Do you have a reason to learn?" She said, "I want to move to Canada one day." I said, "That's your reason. That's your goal. Every word you learn brings you closer to that dream." She nodded, but still looked tired. So I gave her a small challenge. I said, "For 1 week, listen to something in English for 10 minutes every morning. A story, a podcast, anything you enjoy. Then write one sentence about it in your notebook." She agreed. After 1 week, she came to class and said, "Now I start my day feeling more positive. I don't do a lot, but it feels like I'm doing something." That is what builds consistency. You don't have to study for 5 hours every day. Even 10 minutes, if done regularly, can change your life. I once told my students, "You brush your teeth every day. You don't forget. You do it because it's a habit. You don't wait to feel excited. You just do it." Make English like that, a habit, a part of your day. When English becomes part of your routine, it stops feeling like a burden. It becomes familiar, like a friend. And friends are easier to talk to. Let me tell you one more thing. Sometimes you will feel tired. Sometimes you will feel like you're not improving. You will hear someone speak fluent English, and you will think, "I can never speak like that." But remember, every fluent speaker was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once forgot the same words you forget. They just kept going. They didn't stop. And you don't have to stop either. Close your eyes and imagine a road. You are walking on it. Some days you walk fast. Some days you walk slow. Some days you sit down and rest. But you always move forward. That is your journey to fluency. And every word you say is one more step.
One day, a student named Arib came to me after class. He looked upset. He said, "Teacher, I keep studying, but I don't feel fluent. My brother speaks English so easily. I feel like I'm falling behind." I asked him, "Do you know how long your brother has been speaking English?" He thought for a moment. "Since he was in school?" I said, "And how long have you been learning?" He said, "Only 1 year." I looked at him kindly and said, "Then don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. Every learner has a different journey. Some learn quickly, others take time. Some have more chances to practice. Others are just starting. But all of them, including you, can become fluent. What matters is not how fast you go, but that you keep going. Comparing yourself to others only makes you feel small. Instead, compare yourself to who you were last month. Think about what you can do now that you couldn't do before. Can you understand more? Can you say more? Can you listen longer without feeling confused? Those are signs of growth. Even small progress is real progress. I once had a student named Sumi. She was very quiet and gentle. She didn't like to speak in front of the class, but she loved to write. Every week, she gave me one short story she had written in English.
At first, her stories were simple, short sentences, easy words, but every week they got a little longer, a little more detailed. She started using new words. Her grammar improved. Her stories became more emotional. One day, she wrote about her grandmother. It was a beautiful story. After I read it, I told her, "Sumi, your English is growing. I can feel your voice in your writing." She smiled and said, "I still don't speak much, but now I feel like I can express myself." Fluency is not only about speaking out loud. It's about feeling comfortable in the language. It's about expressing who you are. Some students speak loudly, but they don't say much. Others speak softly, but their words touch your heart. So don't worry about being loud. Focus on being clear. Be real. Be kind to yourself. I always tell my students, if you speak from the heart, people will listen. Another student named Mehdi had a habit of translating everything from his native language. Every sentence he spoke in English felt slow and a bit strange. One day, I gave him a different exercise. I said, try to think in pictures, not in your language. When you see a word, don't translate it, just imagine it. He didn't understand at first, so I showed him. If you see the word apple, don't think of the word in your language, just picture the apple, its color, its shape, the taste. If you hear the word run, imagine yourself running. He tried it for 1 week. Then he came back and said, "It feels strange at first, but now some words come faster. I don't need to translate." That's because language is not only in your mind, it's also in your senses. When you use your eyes, ears, and imagination, learning becomes deeper. Try this with new words. Don't just learn what they mean, feel them, see them, hear them. For example, the word rain. Don't just say, "Rain means water from the sky." Close your eyes. Imagine it. The sound of drops on your window, the smell of wet earth, the cold wind on your face. Then say, "It's raining. I'm watching the rain from my room." Now you're not just learning the word, you're living it. That's what makes it stay in your memory. Another useful way to remember words is to connect them to emotions. We remember things better when we feel something. If a word makes you smile or feel excited or even a little sad, it stays longer in your mind. I had a student named Bilal. He told me, "I always forget boring words, but I remember words from songs and movies." I said, "That's because songs and movies make you feel." So I gave him this advice. When you learn a new word, try to make it part of a story. Create a little scene in your mind. Add people. Add emotion. He started doing that, and slowly his memory got better. One day, he said, "Now I can remember most of the new words I learn." Not because he had a better brain, but because he was learning in a better way. Fluency doesn't need to be boring. In fact, it should not be boring. If you feel bored, your brain stops caring. So make learning fun. Watch something you love. Talk about things that matter to you. Play word games. Write your own short stories. Record your voice and listen back. These things may feel small, but they make a big difference. Another student named Arif once asked me, "Is it okay to repeat the same story many times?" I said, "Yes. In fact, repetition is one of the best ways to become fluent." He looked confused. I explained, "Think about your favorite song. You've listened to it many times, right? That's why you remember the words. That's why you can sing it without thinking." The same is true for language. If you repeat something many times, it becomes automatic. So don't be afraid to go back to the same video, the same audio, the same sentence. Each time you repeat, you notice something new. Your ears get sharper. Your brain gets faster. Your tongue becomes more confident. And one day, the words just come out, smooth and natural. Fluency is not magic. It is practice. It is repetition. It is falling in love with the process. And when you fall in love with the process, the results take care of themselves. Let me tell you one final story for today. A student named Anika came to class one rainy morning. She was quiet. I asked her what was wrong. She said, "I practiced so much, but yesterday I spoke to someone in English and I forgot everything. I feel like I failed." I looked at her and said, "You didn't fail. You took a brave step. You spoke. That's already success." She said, "But I made mistakes." I said, "Mistakes are not signs of failure. They are signs of effort." And then I asked her, "Would you rather stay silent forever and never make a mistake, or speak with mistakes and grow?" She thought about it. Then she said, "I would rather grow." That day, she tried again. She spoke to her partner in English. She made mistakes, but she also made progress. At the end of class, she said, "I'm glad I didn't give up." I said, "I am too." Because fluency doesn't belong to the perfect. It belongs to the persistent. It belongs to the ones who keep trying, even when they forget, even when they feel nervous, even when the words don't come out right. And if you're still trying, then you are already on your way.
One morning, just before class began, I noticed a student sitting alone by the window. Her name was Liana. She looked deep in thought, her notebook open in front of her, but she wasn't writing. I walked over and asked softly, "Is something on your mind?" She looked up and said, "Teacher, I keep learning new words, but they all mix together in my head. I don't know which word to use. I get confused." I nodded and said, "That happens to many learners. You are not alone, but let me tell you a small trick." She looked curious. I said, "Use words in groups. Don't learn them one by one. Try to learn them as friends." She asked, "What do you mean?" I said, "Some words live together. They often appear in the same sentence or idea. For example, hungry goes with eat, tired goes with rest, late goes with time. When you learn them as pairs or phrases, your brain remembers them faster." I wrote a few on the board. Feel hungry, go to bed, wake up early, make a mistake, have a question. Then I asked the class, "Can you make sentences with these?" Slowly, hands went up. I feel hungry now. I go to bed at 10. I made a mistake yesterday. As the sentences came out, students started to smile. I looked back at Liana. She was writing. Her pen moved with more energy now. Later, she came to me and said, "I think learning in groups is easier. My mind feels more clear." That's because the brain likes patterns. It likes rhythm. When you learn with flow, you speak with ease. This is why listening is so powerful. When you listen to stories or podcasts or conversations, you hear the natural way people speak. You don't only learn grammar, you learn how English feels. Many students forget this. They focus only on rules. They think fluency comes from studying books. But real fluency comes from the ear. I once had a student named Tanvir. He was very smart. He could explain grammar better than anyone in the class. But when he spoke, it sounded like a textbook, too formal, too stiff. I asked him, "How often do you listen to English?" He said, "Not much. I mostly read." I said, "Try this. Listen to short English videos every day. Don't write anything. Don't try to understand everything. Just listen. Let the language enter your ears." He looked unsure, but he agreed. 1 week later, his speech changed. It was smoother, more natural. He said, "Now I understand how people really speak."
That's the magic of listening. You learn not just words, but feeling, not just structure, but style. And when you combine listening with speaking, reading, and writing, you become a balanced learner. Every day, do a little of each. Listen to a story. Speak a few sentences. Read a short passage. Write one paragraph. Even if it takes just 15 minutes, that's enough. Because what you do every day becomes your strength. I met a student once who loved to draw. Her name was Yasmin. She struggled with remembering words, so I gave her a challenge. Draw your vocabulary, I said. She laughed. What do you mean? I explained. Take the words you learn and make small pictures for each. Don't write translations. Draw what they mean to you. She went home and tried it. The next day, she brought a notebook full of sketches. A cup for the word tea, a smiling face for happy, a dark sky with stars for night. She said, "This helped me so much. I can see the words now in my mind." Because learning is not only about reading and writing, it's also about using your creativity. Use your hands, use your voice, use your body. If you like music, sing. If you like acting, speak in front of a mirror. If you like stories, tell one to a friend. Make English part of your hobbies, your emotions, your life. That's when the language becomes real. I once said to my class, you don't need to learn 100 words today. You need to use 5 words in a real way. And one student replied, that feels possible. Yes, that's the idea. Make it possible. Make it small. Make it real. And soon, the small things become big things. Your mind gets stronger, your confidence grows. You no longer look for the perfect word. You say what you can, and you keep going. You stop thinking about mistakes. You focus on connection, and then fluency begins to flow. One student, named Omar, asked me, what should I do if I'm tired of learning? I told him, rest, but don't quit. He asked, is it okay to take a break? I said, of course. Your mind needs space, your body needs rest. But after that, come back. He said, won't I forget everything? I smiled and said, if you built it once, you can build it again. And next time, it will be stronger. After 3 days, he returned to class. He said, I missed it. I said, that means your heart is still here. Sometimes we forget, but we never really start from zero. Every time you return to English, you come back a little wiser, because fluency is not just about words. It's about patience, it's about love, it's about courage. And you, dear learner, have all 3 inside you. So keep going, one sentence at a time, one day at a time. You are doing better than you think.
In one of my beginner classes, there was a boy named Rahan. He always came early and sat in the front row. He was polite, quiet, and he always listened carefully. But after a few weeks, I noticed something. Rahan never spoke in class. He took notes, he listened, he nodded, but not once did he raise his hand. One day, I waited after class and asked him, Rahan, how was the class going for you? He looked down and said, I understand everything you say. I just can't speak. I asked, why not? He said softly, because when I open my mouth, nothing comes out. I think of the sentence, but I can't say it. I sat beside him and said, do you speak English outside of this class? He shook his head. No one around me speaks English. I smiled and said, then it's time to create your own speaking world. He looked confused. I explained, you don't need a partner to speak. You can speak to yourself. Describe your room. Talk about your day. Pretend you're teaching someone else. He asked, will that really help? I nodded. It always helps. Speaking is a muscle. You must use it, even if no one is listening. So I gave Rahan a simple exercise. Every morning, before brushing his teeth, he would say 3 sentences in English. Just 3. They could be anything. I feel tired. Today is Monday. I have class in the afternoon. It didn't matter if the grammar was perfect. It didn't matter if he repeated the same thing. What mattered was using his voice.
After 1 week, he came to class and said, "Teacher, I said 15 different sentences this week. Some were funny, some were wrong, but I said them." I smiled and said, "That's how it begins." Fluency doesn't start on stage. It starts in your room, with your own voice, with your own thoughts. Another student named Mariam struggled with remembering long sentences. She said, "I always lose track of what I'm trying to say." I asked her, "Do you breathe when you speak?" She looked confused. "Of course I do." I said, "Not just breathe to stay alive. I mean, do you pause? Do you stop for a moment when your mind feels full?" She said, "No, I try to say everything quickly." I smiled and said, "Then try something new. Say one idea, then stop, breathe, then say the next." She tried it the next day. Instead of one long sentence, she said several short ones. I went to the market. I saw my cousin. We bought fruit. Then we walked home. Her voice was calmer. Her face was brighter. She said, "I feel more in control." That's the gift of pausing. It gives you space. It gives your brain time to catch up. It gives your heart time to breathe. Fluency is not only in the speed of your words, it's in the rhythm of your speaking. Many students worry about sounding smart, but sounding smart isn't about using big words. It's about using clear, simple language that others understand. I had a student named Hassan who tried very hard to use advanced vocabulary. Instead of "I'm tired," he would say, "I'm extremely fatigued." Instead of "let's eat," he would say, "let's proceed to consume food." His sentences were correct, but they didn't feel natural. One day I said, "Why not try speaking the way people speak in real life?" He looked surprised. "Isn't that too basic?" I said, "No, simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is strength." He decided to try it. In his next class, he said, "I'm tired today. Let's eat something." Everyone smiled. His message was clear. His confidence grew. After class, he said, "This feels better, more real." Real communication is not about impressing people. It's about reaching them, reaching their hearts, helping them understand. That's true fluency. Another thing I often notice is that students try to remember everything at once. They open a book and try to learn 20 words in one day. They feel proud for a moment, but the next day they forget most of them, and they feel frustrated. So I tell them, don't learn too many new words at once. Learn fewer, but learn them better. Choose 5 new words a day, then do everything with them. Write them, speak them, use them in questions, use them in answers. Try to make a story with them. Repeat them before sleeping. When you learn deeply, you remember longer. Your brain doesn't need more information. It needs more connection. That's why I ask my students to keep a word diary. Every day, write one word. Write what it means. Write a sentence. Draw a picture. Write how it makes you feel. The next day, review it. Add one more word. After a month, you have a book full of live-in words, not just memorized words, but words that belong to you. One of my students, Kazi, tried this. He came to class after 3 weeks and said, "I remember every word I wrote in my diary." I asked, "Why do you think that happened?" He said, "Because I didn't just look at them, I lived with them." That's the secret. Live with your words. Make them part of your daily life. Think of them in the morning. Speak them in the afternoon. Review them at night. Soon, they will feel like old friends, not strangers on a vocabulary list. Fluency is not about how many words you know. It's about how well you use the words you already have. You don't need thousands of words to express yourself. You need courage, you need practice, you need connection. Even one word used the right way can build a bridge between 2 people. And the more bridges you build, the easier English becomes. So don't chase numbers. Chase meaning. Chase feeling. Chase connection. You're not here to be a dictionary. You're here to be yourself in English. And that, my dear learner, is more than enough.
One afternoon, I gave a speaking activity to the class. I told everyone, talk about your favorite memory. Just a few sentences. Some students started writing. Some began whispering to their partners.
but one girl just sat still. Her name was Tanya. I walked up to her and asked, "What's your favorite memory?" She looked nervous. She said, "I know the story, but I don't know the English." I said, "Then tell me the story in simple words, one sentence at a time. If you get stuck, I'll help." She nodded slowly. She began, "When I was small, I went to the river with my grandmother. She cooked rice, and I played." Her voice was soft, her sentences broken, but her eyes sparkled. She was reliving a moment from her life. I said, "That's perfect. That's English. That's fluency." She said, "But I made many mistakes." I replied, "You also made something beautiful." She smiled. That's the truth about fluency. It's not about perfect grammar. It's about being able to share your story, your thoughts, your memories, even if the words are simple. Every learner has a story inside, and English is just a tool to tell that story. I always say this to my students: speak your life, not your textbook. Don't try to sound like someone else. Try to sound like yourself, because your real voice is the one people want to hear. Another student once asked me, "What should I do when I forget a word while speaking?" I said, "Don't stop. Keep going." He looked unsure. "But won't it sound strange?" I said, "Not if you handle it with calm." I taught him this: if you don't know the word, explain it. Instead of saying, "I saw a squirrel," you can say, "I saw a small animal with a big tail. It climbs trees." Instead of saying, "I forgot my umbrella," you can say, "I didn't bring the thing we use when it rains." Your listener will understand, and you'll keep the conversation going. That is fluency, not knowing every word, but knowing how to move forward anyway. Language is flexible. It lets you work around what you don't know. And as you keep doing that, something amazing happens. The missing word will eventually return to you, or you'll learn it naturally through use. One student, named Saima, was afraid to speak for this reason. She said, "What if I forget something important?" I told her, "You won't forget your meaning, you'll only forget a word, and your meaning is more important than a perfect sentence." She tried speaking in small group discussions. At first, she paused a lot, but she kept trying, and her classmates helped. They filled in a word here and there. They nodded. They smiled. After a few weeks, Saima said to me, "Now I feel less scared because I know people understand me, even when I'm not perfect." Fluency is also about trust, trusting yourself, trusting your listener, trusting that the message matters more than the mistakes. There's something else that helps: recording yourself. I often tell learners, record your voice when you speak English, then listen to it. Some students feel shy about this. They say, "I don't like my voice." But I say, that's not the point. The goal is not to sound perfect. It's to hear how your English really sounds. When you listen to yourself, you notice things. Maybe you speak too fast. Maybe you pause too much. Maybe your pronunciation needs work. Or maybe you're better than you thought. A student named Noman tried this for 1 week. He recorded 1 minute of himself speaking every night. On the first day, he cringed when he heard it. On the second day, he corrected a mistake. By the 5th day, he started using new words. After 10 days, he came to class and said, "Now I enjoy speaking because I know how I sound." Self-awareness is a powerful tool. It makes your speaking stronger, your words more clear, your voice more confident, and it all starts with a small decision: to record, to listen, to grow. There was another student who used to make the same mistake in every class. She said he when she meant she, and she when she meant he. Her name was Elma.
Her classmates corrected her again and again. Still, the mistake came back. One day, she laughed and said, "Why can't I fix this?" I told her, "Because your brain is used to a certain pattern. You must teach it slowly." So we did an exercise. For 10 minutes, she only said sentences about women. She is kind. She goes to school. She likes to read. Then 10 minutes about men. He is tall. He works at the bank. He plays football. She practiced every day. After 2 weeks, the mistake disappeared. She said, "I don't even think about it now. It just comes out right." That's what happens when you repeat with focus. The brain learns, the tongue follows, and soon it becomes automatic. Fluency is not luck, it's habit. It's about what you do every day, not what you know once. So create your habits. Speak in the morning. Listen during your walk. Read something before bed. Write one new sentence every night. Talk to yourself when you're alone. Celebrate when someone understands you. Smile when you learn something new. This is the real path. Not fast, not perfect, but steady. And when you walk it every day, you will one day look back and realize you're speaking English with ease. It feels natural. It feels like a part of you. And that, my friend, is true fluency. Not just in words, but in your heart. And that, my friend, is nothing no test can measure.
It was a rainy day, and the classroom was quiet. The students had just finished their writing task, and I could see some tired faces. I asked the class, "Do you ever feel like English is too big, too difficult to finish learning?" Many students looked up and nodded slowly. One boy raised his hand. His name was Shuvo. He said, "Yes, teacher. Every time I learn something new, I realize how much more I don't know. It makes me feel small." I smiled and said, "That feeling is normal. It means you care. It means you're looking ahead." I told him, "Imagine English is like a mountain. When you stand at the bottom and look up, it feels endless. But once you take your first few steps, you start to climb. With each step, you see more. You feel stronger. And slowly, that mountain becomes your road." Shuvo said, "But what if I stop?" I answered, "Then the mountain waits for you. It does not move. It's always there. But if you keep going, even slowly, you will reach higher places." I paused, then added, "And sometimes the most beautiful views come after the hardest climbs." The class was silent for a moment. Then one student whispered, "I want to keep going." That's the heart of learning. Not speed, not perfection, but the decision to continue. Many learners quit too early. They think they are not good enough. But the truth is, those who succeed are not the fastest or the smartest. They are the ones who don't stop. One student, Anwar, said to me once, "I will never be fluent. I'm too old." I looked at him and said, "Fluency doesn't care about age. Fluency cares about effort." He said, "But I make too many mistakes." I said, "Mistakes are your teachers. The more you make, the more you learn." Anwar started writing 5 sentences every morning. At first, the sentences were simple. I wake up at 7. I eat breakfast. I go to work. But he wrote every day. After 3 months, his notebook was full, and so was his confidence. He said, "I'm not fluent yet, but I'm not afraid anymore." That's progress. That's success. Not a perfect score, not a perfect accent, but courage and peace. Another student named Tasnim struggled with listening. She said, "I can read and write, but when someone speaks fast, I feel lost." I asked her, "Do you listen to English outside of class?" She said, "Not really. It makes me nervous." So I gave her a different way. "Don't start with fast videos," I said. "Start with short ones, slow ones, even the same video again and again." She started watching one video every day, just 2 minutes long, with subtitles, then without, then with again. Then she repeated it aloud. After 1 week, she said, "Now I understand more." The second time, I hear things I missed before. That's how it works. Your ears need practice too. And when you listen again and again, your mind begins to expect the words, to catch them, to understand them naturally. It's like learning a song. At first, you only hear sounds, then words, then meaning, then emotion. And soon, you can sing along. Listening is one of the most powerful tools for fluency, but only when you do it often. Even if you don't understand everything, keep listening, because your brain is always learning, even when you don't feel it. Another thing that helps is choosing topics you enjoy. If you like cooking, listen to cooking videos in English. If you love travel, watch travel vlogs. If you enjoy news, find simple English news channels. Learning becomes easier when your interest is real. One student, Xenia, loved animals, so I told her, find a podcast about animals, watch documentaries, read animal stories. She came back after 1 week and said, "It feels different. I don't get bored anymore." That's because her heart was involved. Your heart is your best teacher. When you care, you remember. When you enjoy, you grow. So don't follow only textbooks. Follow your curiosity. Another student once asked, "How can I speak more naturally?" I said, "Copy real people." He looked confused. I explained, when you hear a native speaker say a sentence, repeat it out loud. Try to copy the way they say it. Not just the words, but the music. He said, "The music?" "Yes," I said. "Every language has rhythm, emotion, tone." He tried this with short clips from a TV show. He paused after each sentence, then repeated it with the same feeling. After 2 weeks, his speaking changed. It was still simple, but it sounded real. He said, "Now I feel like I'm really speaking English, not just translating." That's the goal, to sound real, to feel real, to live in the language, not just study it. I once asked my students, "What does fluency mean to you?" They gave different answers. Speaking without fear, being understood, thinking in English, enjoying the language. All of these are correct, because fluency is not one single thing. It is a mix of many things: speaking, listening, feeling, trying, failing, trying again, and slowly becoming yourself in a new language. So whatever your reason is, travel, career, school, confidence, hold on to it. Your reason is your fuel. It will carry you forward when learning feels hard, when you feel tired, when you feel stuck. Go back to your reason. Close your eyes and see the future version of yourself, speaking clearly, understanding easily, living freely in English. That person is not far away. They are just a few more days of effort ahead, and you are walking toward them one word at a time.
It was near the end of the school year when a girl named Asha stayed behind after class. She held a folded paper in her hand and looked unsure. I asked gently, "What is it?" She handed me the paper. It was a short story written in English. The handwriting was small but careful. The story was about her first day at a new school, how scared she felt, and how someone smiled at her and made her feel welcome. I read the story slowly. When I looked up, her eyes were waiting. I said, "This is beautiful." She asked, "But is it correct?" I said, "It doesn't need to be perfect. It's yours. It's real. It's clear. That is more important." She smiled with relief. Asha then said, "I didn't show anyone before. I thought people would laugh." I replied, "They won't laugh. They will listen. Because when you write or speak from the heart, people feel it." This is what I tell all my students. Don't wait to be perfect before you share your voice. Start now. Start where you are. Because fluency is not only about knowing everything, it's about using what you already have. Even a short message, spoken clearly and honestly, can make someone stop and listen. There was a time when I met a young man who wanted to become a teacher. His English was not very strong, but his dream was big. He said, "I want to teach, but my English is not good enough." I told him, "Then make that part of your journey. Learn and share what you learn." He started practicing daily.
He would teach his little brother English words after learning them in class. He started a blog, writing one short post each week in English, just 3 or 4 sentences at first. Slowly, he built a following. People liked his honesty, his growth, his effort. And one day, he said, "I didn't wait to be perfect. I began as a learner and became a teacher." That's the truth for all of us. You don't need to wait to begin. Fluency grows while you speak, not before you speak. Learning becomes real when you share it. Another thing many students ask is, how do I stay motivated? Motivation is not something you find once and keep forever. It comes and goes. Some days you feel strong and excited, other days tired and unsure. That is normal. But what helps most is creating a routine, even a small one. A student named Maureen used to practice English at the same time every night, just 15 minutes before bed. She would read 1 page from a book, write 1 sentence about her day, and repeat 5 new words aloud. It was her quiet time, her own promise to herself. She didn't miss a day for 3 months. At the end of that time, her confidence had grown, her speaking had improved, and she didn't feel tired or lost. She said, "This is just what I do now, like brushing my teeth. It's part of me." Consistency beats motivation every time, because motivation fades, but habits remain. If you build a habit, it will carry you through days when you feel lazy, confused, or stuck. So find your time. Maybe it's 10 minutes in the morning, or 15 minutes after lunch, or 5 minutes before bed. But protect that time. Make it yours. And in that small space, learn 1 thing. Practice 1 idea. Speak 1 sentence. You'll be surprised how much you grow. I also remind students to take breaks, not to quit, but to rest. There was a student, Rifat, who tried too hard. He practiced 3 hours every day, watched videos, wrote notes, read aloud, but after 2 weeks, he felt exhausted. He said, "I don't want to do it anymore." I told him, "Slow down. Fluency is not a race, it's a journey." He took a break for 2 days. Just listen to English music, no pressure. Then he came back, refreshed, calm, ready to begin again. Now he studies less, but he enjoys it more. That joy makes a big difference. If you force yourself too much, English becomes heavy. But if you enjoy the process, English becomes a friend. Remember, the goal is not to finish English. There's no finish line. The goal is to feel free inside the language, to speak your mind, to understand others, to read a message and smile, to write a story and feel proud. Another thing students often forget is the power of community. Learning alone is good, but learning with others is better. I had 2 students, Arman and Jaheen. They were best friends. They decided to speak only in English with each other, 1 hour every evening. At first, it was strange. They laughed, made mistakes, felt silly, but they kept going. Soon, it became normal, then fun, then easy. They started correcting each other, suggesting better words, helping with grammar. After 6 months, both of them had become much more fluent. I asked them what helped the most. They said, speaking every day and doing it together. You don't need many people. Even 1 learning partner can change your path. So, if you can, find someone, a friend, a classmate, a sibling. Practice speaking together. Correct gently, support each other, and grow together. You'll learn faster, you'll laugh more, you'll remember longer. Because when we learn together, we go farther. There is something beautiful that happens when 2 learners share the same dream. They remind each other to keep going. And that reminder, sometimes, is all we need. So, if you're feeling tired, find someone who also wants to grow. And walk the journey side by side. Because fluency isn't just a solo path. It can be a shared one, too.
The classroom was quiet that day. I asked my students to close their eyes and think of 1 sentence in English they had never said before. It could be anything: a memory, a dream, a simple feeling. After a moment, a hand went up. It was Ria. She said, "I want to say, I miss my old house." Her voice was soft. I repeated her sentence. "I miss my old house." Then I asked the class, who else has a memory they want to put into English? Another hand went up. Then another. Within minutes, the room was filled with simple, beautiful sentences. I loved my school garden. My father taught me how to ride a bike. I watched the stars with my cousin at night. Each sentence was short, but each one was real. That day, the students didn't just practice English, they practiced being themselves in English. That is one of the most powerful things you can do as a learner. Don't only talk about grammar rules or textbook topics. Talk about you, your life, your heart, your experiences. That's where language becomes real. And when something is real, it sticks. You don't forget it easily. Another student once told me, "I know many English words, but when I try to speak, I freeze. I forget everything." I asked him, "Do you practice speaking alone?" He said, "No, I feel silly." I said, "Try anyway. Try when no one is watching. Speak in your room, in front of the mirror, in the shower, on your walk." He said, "Does that really help?" I replied, "Yes, because it builds confidence. It tells your brain, this is safe." Speaking is like a skill you must warm up. If you wait for the perfect moment, you will wait too long. But if you begin with small steps, your voice will grow strong. So practice speaking alone, not because you don't have anyone to talk to, but because your voice needs space to grow. Start with your daily routine. Say what you're doing. "I'm brushing my teeth. I'm making tea. I'm cleaning my room." These may sound simple, but they train your mouth, your mind, and your memory. And slowly, those simple words become fluent phrases. There was another student named Niloy. He loved learning English, but hated making mistakes. He said, "Every time I say something wrong, I feel stupid." I said, "What if I told you that every fluent speaker, every single one, has made thousands of mistakes?" He looked surprised. I continued, "You cannot become fluent without mistakes. Mistakes are the way." He still didn't look convinced, so I gave him a challenge. I said, "Today, I want you to make 5 mistakes on purpose." He laughed. "What?" I said, "Yes. Say something wrong, then correct it. Learn from it. Let go of fear." That day, he said a few funny things. "I goes to school." Then he paused, laughed, and corrected himself. "I go to school." He said, "My brother eating breakfast." "No, my brother is eating breakfast." By the end of class, he was relaxed. He smiled more. His words flowed more naturally. He said, "I didn't feel bad this time." That's the power of accepting mistakes. When you stop being afraid, you become free. And fluency needs freedom. Freedom to try, freedom to forget, freedom to say something wrong and try again. Every step you take, even the small ones, brings you closer. So celebrate your small wins. Did you understand a sentence today? That's a win. Did you learn one new word? That's a win. Did you speak for 30 seconds without stopping? That's a win. Every small step matters. One of my students kept a victory list. Every time she did something new in English, watched a full video, asked a question, wrote a paragraph, she wrote it down. After 2 months, her list was full, and so was her confidence. She told me, "I used to think I was not improving, but now I see all the things I've done." You can do this too. Write your wins. Celebrate your progress. Remind yourself that learning is happening even if it feels slow. Fluency is like climbing a staircase. Sometimes you feel like you're stuck on one step, but when you look back, you realize you've come a long way. You're not where you started, and you're still moving forward. So be proud. Another helpful habit is reading out loud. Reading silently is good, but reading out loud is even better because it trains your speaking and listening at the same time. I tell my students, choose a short story, read it out loud every day for 1 week. One student, Rakib, tried this. At first, he read slowly. He stumbled over words, but he didn't stop. By the 3rd day, he was smoother. By the 5th, he was faster. By the 7th, he could read the full story clearly and confidently. He said, "I didn't know this could help so much." I said, "That's because you gave your voice practice and now it's stronger." Even 5 minutes of reading out loud a day can change your speaking because your tongue learns, your ear learns, your memory learns. And soon, when you need those words, they come to you naturally, not from the dictionary in your head, but from the voice you've trained. So try it. Choose something short. Read slowly. Don't worry about mistakes. Just read. Your voice is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And the stronger it gets, the more confident you become. You don't need a big vocabulary to sound fluent. You need practice. You need patience. You need to speak again and again until it feels natural. And you will get there. I believe in you because you are already doing the most important thing. You are trying. And that effort will take you farther than you think.
One day, I gave a short speaking test in class. It was simple. Just talk for 1 minute about anything. A memory, a favorite food, a place you love. No pressure, no grades, just a chance to speak. When it was Farzana's turn, she hesitated. She looked down at her desk. I walked over and gently asked, "Would you like to speak about something you love?" She nodded slowly. Then she said, "I want to talk about mangoes." Everyone smiled. She began, "In summer, I go to my village. There are many mango trees. I sit under the tree with my cousins. We eat the mangoes. They are sweet. I feel happy." That was all, just a few sentences. But it was perfect, because she spoke from memory, from feeling, from experience, and because she started small, with something simple, something real. The words came easily. That's a powerful way to practice. Don't search for difficult topics. Start with what's close to you. What do you love? What do you remember? What do you see every day? Speak about that. Because when you care about the topic, the words come more naturally, and the listener feels it too. Many learners think they must speak like news reporters, serious, polished, perfect. But real English isn't like that. Real English is casual, human, sometimes messy, but full of meaning. You don't need to sound like someone on TV. You just need to sound like yourself, in English. A student named Habib once asked, "How can I sound more fluent when I speak?" I asked, "Do you read conversations out loud?" He said, "No, just grammar books." I said, "Try this instead. Read dialogues, short scenes, everyday talk." He tried it. He read conversations from storybooks and English learning websites. He read out loud every day for 2 weeks. When he came back, I asked him to speak about his weekend. He said, "On Saturday, I met my uncle. We talked about cricket. On Sunday, I stayed home and watched a movie." His words flowed. He sounded natural. He said, "I didn't practice this speech, but it felt easy." That's what happens when you train your ear and your tongue together. Dialogue teaches you rhythm, the rise and fall of a sentence, the small phrases native speakers use, like, I guess, kind of, not really. When you hear and repeat these, they become part of your own English, and suddenly your speaking feels more alive, more real. That's why I tell all my students, don't just study words, study how people use them. Watch videos, notice how people greet each other, how they answer simple questions, how they explain their thoughts, and then
copy them. Not to become someone else, but to learn the music of English, and then make it your own. There was another student who had a special notebook. She called it her phrase book. Every time she heard a useful phrase, she wrote it down. She didn't write just words. She wrote complete expressions. How's it going? That makes sense. I'm not sure, but maybe. After a month, she had 20 full pages of phrases. She practiced them every day, and when she spoke, she didn't have to build every sentence from zero. She already had tools. One day, she said, "English feels easier now. I don't freeze anymore." That's because she gave herself language she could trust. Think of phrases as building blocks. The more you collect, the easier it is to speak. Because speaking is not just about memory, it's about having ready tools. You don't need to create a new sentence every time. You just need to remember how something was said before and use it again, in your own way. Another important lesson is this: fluency is not just in your mouth, it's also in your ears. When you listen better, you speak better. Because listening teaches you how English works, how ideas connect, how real people use the language in fast, slow, quiet, and emotional ways. A student named Nusrat used to avoid listening practice. She said, "It's too fast. I don't understand anything." I told her, "That's okay, but don't avoid it. Slow it down." She started watching English videos with subtitles and playback speed set to 75%. She paused after each sentence, repeated it aloud, wrote down what she liked, listened again, and slowly, the speed didn't feel so fast anymore. One day, I asked her, "How's your listening?" She said, "It's still hard, but now I'm not afraid of it." That's a big step. You don't have to understand everything, but you do have to stay with it. Because listening is the secret door to fluency. It teaches you what textbooks can't. It gives you the feeling of the language. And when you feel it, you remember it. Another beautiful way to learn is by connecting English with your own language, but not just through translation, through comparison. Ask yourself, how do people say this in English? How is it different from how we say it? Why do they use certain words together? What's the tone? What's the meaning behind the meaning? This makes learning more deep, more personal. One student kept a language diary. She would write one English sentence, then write what it meant in her language, then write a note about how it felt. Sometimes she noticed small things, like how English puts adjectives before nouns, or how certain phrases can be polite or strong depending on how you say them. This gave her control. It made her a thinker, not just a learner. And thinkers become fluent faster, because they don't just repeat, they reflect. So think about English as a living system, a tool for connection, a way to learn about others and about yourself.
One evening after class, I found a note left on my desk. It was written on a small piece of paper and it said, "I want to learn English, but I feel too slow. I'm trying, but it feels like everyone else is moving ahead and I'm still here." There was no name, but I recognized the handwriting. It was from a quiet student named Aman. The next day, I waited after class and asked him, "Did you leave this?" He nodded. I said, "Let me ask you something. If a flower grows slowly, does that make it less beautiful?" He stayed quiet, then shook his head. I said, "Then why do you think learning slowly is a bad thing?" He looked up and his eyes softened. I told him, "Fluency is not a race. It's not a competition. There is no first prize for speaking faster. The real prize is peace, confidence, and that only comes when you stop comparing." He said, "But what if I never catch up?" I said, "You don't need to catch up. You only need to keep going." That moment stayed with me because it reminded me that many learners feel the same. They feel behind. They feel not smart enough. They feel too slow. But slow is not weak. Slow means careful. Slow means steady. Slow means you are giving yourself time to grow strong roots. So if you ever feel slow, remember, the strongest trees grow slowly. Another student named Nadia once said, "I want to speak with confidence, but my mind always goes blank." I asked her,
"What do you say to yourself before you speak?" She said, "I tell myself, don't mess up, don't forget, don't sound stupid." I nodded and said, "That's the problem." She looked confused. I continued, "Your mind is filled with fear before your mouth even opens. Change the words in your mind." She asked, "What should I say instead?" I said, "Try this. Say, it's okay to pause. It's okay to forget. I will try and I will improve." The next day, before she spoke, I saw her whispering to herself. Then she looked up and gave a short, clear answer in English. After class, she said, "I felt better this time. I didn't pressure myself." That's the power of self-talk. The words you speak to yourself shape your performance. If you say, "I can't do this," your brain closes. If you say, "I'll try," your brain opens. So speak kindly, not just to others, but to yourself. Another thing learners ask is, how can I speak longer without stopping? They say, "I always run out of things to say." I tell them, that's because you try to speak with only your memory. Instead, speak with your imagination. Imagine a picture, imagine a place, imagine a feeling, and describe it. Not in perfect sentences, just in steps. For example, if I say, "Talk about your morning," don't freeze. Just begin with what you remember. I woke up late. Then I made tea. I didn't eat breakfast. The sky was gray. My bus was full. That's all. Now you're speaking. One idea leads to another. The more you describe, the more your brain opens. Speaking is like walking on a path. If you take the first few steps, the rest becomes easier. So don't aim for long, perfect speeches. Aim for simple steps. One sentence, then the next. Soon, you'll find yourself speaking more than you expected. One student, named Joy, said, "I always forget the word I need in the middle of a sentence." I told him, "Then try to explain that word in a different way." He said, "But isn't that strange?" I said, "No, that's how real conversation works. Native speakers do this too. If they forget a word, they say, 'You know, the thing you use for,' or 'it's like when you—'" So I gave him a small practice task. I said, "Choose 5 words. For each, explain it without saying the word. For example, for book, it's something you read. It has pages. You hold it in your hand. For rain, it falls from the sky. It makes you wet. You need an umbrella." He did this for a week, and when he forgot a word during conversation, he didn't stop. He described it, and his meaning was clear. He said, "I feel less blocked now. I can keep talking." That's what you want. Not to be perfect, but to be flexible. Because fluency is not knowing every word. It's knowing how to move when you don't know. It's about staying in the conversation, finding a new way, explaining with simple words, and trusting yourself. Another helpful tip is to read stories out loud, then retell them in your own words. This helps with memory, with confidence, and with creativity. One student, Rahima, read a short story every night. Then she would close the book and try to retell it, first in simple sentences. The girl goes to the shop. She meets a man. They talk. She buys food. Then she slowly added more. She said, "The girl walks to the shop. She sees an old man. He smiles at her. They talk about the weather. Then she buys some bread and fruit." Her retelling became longer, more expressive, more natural. She said, "Now I remember more. I speak more freely." That's because retelling trains your brain to build sentences, not just repeat them. You become the speaker, not just the listener. And that changes everything. It turns language from something you receive into something you create. And when you create language,
You become fluent, not because you studied hard, but because you lived it, because it became yours, because you stopped waiting for the right word and started using the words you already have. That's the real secret. Fluency is not something that comes to you. It's something you build, one sentence at a time.
The most common question I hear from students is this: will I ever be fluent? They ask it quietly, sometimes with worry, sometimes with hope, and my answer is always the same. Yes, yes, you will, but not in one day, not in 1 week, and not by magic. You will become fluent through your habits, through your courage, through your small steps repeated over time. Because fluency is not something far away. It's already inside you. It grows every time you listen. It grows every time you speak, even if it's just one sentence. It grows when you learn a new word, or remember an old one, or explain something without stopping, even when it's hard, even when you feel slow, even when no one claps. You are growing. Every time you try, your mind is building something. Your brain is finding patterns. Your mouth is learning movement. Your heart is learning trust. And all of it matters. Don't let one hard day make you forget how far you've come. I remember a student named Sadia. She started with no confidence. Her voice was always soft. She said, "I understand a little, but I can't speak. My words disappear." I told her, "That's okay. Just speak what you can." So she began, one word at a time, then one sentence, then a small paragraph. She read aloud, she listened, she shadowed stories. One day during class, I asked her a question, and she answered with ease. Not fast, not fancy, but fluent. And the class noticed. They clapped. She looked surprised. She said, "I didn't even think. The words just came." That's what fluency feels like. It doesn't shout. It arrives quietly. And one day you notice it. You say something without translating. You explain something clearly. You enjoy a movie without subtitles. You help someone understand a sentence. And you smile because now English feels like part of you. That is where this journey leads. Not to perfection, but to freedom. Freedom to speak without fear, to ask, to answer, to express, to belong. So if you've been listening this far, if you felt lost but kept going, if you've made mistakes but didn't stop, if you've spoken to yourself in the dark, if you've read one page a night, if you've learned one word a day, then you're not a beginner anymore. You're a real learner. You're becoming fluent. And I want you to be proud of that. You did this. You made the decision to improve. You gave time, even when you were tired. You believed, even when the road felt long. And because of that, your English is growing. And so are you. So now take a moment and ask yourself, what have I done today to bring myself closer to fluency? Did I listen to something? Did I speak a little? Did I think in English, even for a few minutes? Did I learn something, even if I forgot it later? If the answer is yes, then you're moving forward. And forward is the only direction that matters. Remember, no one becomes fluent alone. You have your voice, but you also have this space, this journey, this story, and we're walking it together. Every time you hear these words, every time you shadow my voice, every time you repeat a sentence, you're not just learning English. You're becoming someone new, more confident, more open, more connected to the world. So don't stop now. Keep listening, keep speaking, keep trying. You are much closer than you think. And no matter how slow it feels, you're still moving. You're still learning. And fluency is just around the corner. So now, here we are. You've made it all the way to the end of this story. And I want you to pause for a moment, not to study, not to repeat, but simply to breathe, to feel proud, because not everyone finishes what they start, but you did, and that means something. That means your dream of fluency is real. That means your effort is real.
That means your progress, even the small parts, is part of something big, something beautiful. You may not remember every word from this story. You may not speak perfectly tomorrow, but something inside you has changed. A voice has grown, a light has started to shine, and that light will guide you forward. Fluency isn't just about speaking quickly, it's about speaking bravely. It's about trusting yourself, trusting that even when you forget, you can try again, trusting that even when others don't understand, you can still continue, trusting that your English, broken or smooth, slow or fast, is enough. And as you continue this journey, I want you to carry one thing with you. You are not learning alone. Every time you listen to this voice, every time you practice these stories, every time you come back to this space, you are walking with someone, and that makes the journey lighter. You're part of something bigger, a community of learners, of dreamers, of doers, all trying, all learning, one word at a time. So the next time you wake up and feel unsure, the next time you open your book and feel tired, the next time you forget a word and feel small, I want you to remember this. You have come so far, and you are not done. You are still growing, still learning, still moving, and no matter how long it takes, you will get there, because you already started, and that is the hardest part. So keep going, speak even when you're afraid, listen even when it's fast, practice even when no one is watching, and never forget, every single day you try is another step toward the English speaker you're becoming. One day, someone will ask you, how did you become fluent? And you will smile, and you will say, I didn't give up. And that answer will mean more than any grammar book ever could. So thank you for listening, for practicing, for staying until the end. We made this story with care, just for you, because we believe in you, and we know that your voice matters. So let it grow, let it shine, and let the world hear it. One word, one sentence, one story at a time.